In the fall of 2019, a retired schoolteacher named Harlan Bates was hiking a stretch of forested ridge in Stone County, Missouri, when his boot caught on something hard beneath the leaf litter. He knelt down, brushed away a mat of rotting leaves, and found himself staring at the edge of a cast-iron skillet, its handle still perfect, its surface dark with decades of seasoned use. He looked up. Through the trees, barely visible beneath decades of vine and scrub growth, stood the collapsed remains of 6 structures. A settlement, not on any map, not in any county record he could find. Just gone, swallowed whole by the Ozark Hills sometime before living memory. Over the next 3 years, Harlan and a small team of local historians would catalog 25 artifacts recovered from that site. Objects that together painted a detailed, heartbreaking, and absolutely extraordinary picture of the people who had lived there, worked there, raised children there, and then disappeared without a trace. If you're new here and you love discovering the forgotten stories of American history, subscribe now so you never miss one. Let's start counting down. Number 25 is going to shock you with how ordinary it looks and how much it reveals. Number 25, a child's leather shoe. Among the first objects pulled from the soft earth near what had been the largest structure's doorway was a single child's shoe. Right foot, roughly a size 4, which would fit a child between 5 and 8 years old. It was hand-stitched from thick cow leather, the sole worn smooth at the ball of the foot in exactly the way a running child would wear it. The laces were long gone, but the brass eyelets remained perfectly intact, green with oxidation. What made this shoe significant was not its condition, though it was remarkable. What made it significant was the repair work on the heel. 3 layers of leather patches stitched on with heavy thread in 2 different colors, meaning the shoe had been repaired at least twice, likely over a period of several years. Someone had loved that shoe. Someone had knelt down and sewn it back together so a child could keep wearing it. In the Ozarks of the early 20th century, you did not throw away a shoe. You fixed it, then you fixed it again. And then when the child outgrew it, you saved it for the next child. The existence of that shoe told Harlan something immediate. This was a family with children, with limited resources, and with exactly the kind of stubborn, loving practicality that defined Ozark mountain life for generations. Number 24, a cast iron Dutch oven. This was actually the largest piece of cast iron recovered from the site, and it was in spectacular condition. A 5-quart Dutch oven, the lid still seated perfectly on the pot, its interior black with a century of cooking. When the team cleaned the exterior carefully, they found a faint set of initials scratched into the bottom. E.M. Cast iron of this quality was treated as an heirloom in Ozark households. Women brought their skillets and Dutch ovens with them when they married. They passed them to daughters. The fact that this one remained behind, in a settlement that had been clearly and deliberately abandoned, suggested that whoever left did not take everything. They left in a hurry, or they left with the intention of coming back, or they left with grief so heavy they could not carry one more thing. A Dutch oven bearing someone's initials, sitting sealed and waiting in an abandoned house for 100 years, is one of the saddest objects in this entire list. Number 23, a hand-forged axe head. Found near what geologists on the team identified as the remnant of a woodpile area. The soil darker there, rich with decomposed wood fibers. This axe head had been hand-forged by a blacksmith who knew what he was doing. The pole was heavy, balanced to drop with authority. The bit had been sharpened so many times that it had taken on a distinctive convex curve, the steel eating itself away in the service of firewood and fence posts and timber framing. A good axe in the Ozarks was not a tool, it was a partner. Men named their axes. They talked about them the way people today talk about good trucks. This one had no name attached to it anymore, but the steel remembered every use. Number 22, a ceramic crock with a lid, stoneware. Gray with a blue cobalt slip decoration. A simple brush stroke pattern, nothing fancy, but deliberate and human. This was a fermenting crock, the kind used to put up sauerkraut, pickles, green beans, and brine. The interior still held faint residue consistent with fermented vegetables. This crock represents an entire food preservation system that kept families alive through Ozark winters. There were no grocery stores within 20 miles of most hill settlements. You grew it, you preserved it, you ate it in January, and if you did a poor job of it, you got sick or you went hungry. That blue brushstroke on the gray glaze was someone making the practical thing beautiful, which is as human as it gets. Number 21. A leather harness collar, horse collar, large enough for a draft animal of significant size. The leather had dried and cracked in sections, but retained its basic shape, which told the team the collar had been stored under cover rather than left in the open. Brass Hames fittings remained attached, green with age but structurally sound. This settlement had at least one large working horse or mule. That animal would have been the most valuable possession on the property, worth more than the house itself in practical terms. The collar being left behind was another data point in a growing picture. Something had happened here that forced a departure without the most important things. Number 20. A hand-stitched quilt, partially preserved. This was the most fragile textile recovered. Found in a sealed wooden box inside one of the collapsed structures, wrapped in what had once been oilcloth. It had survived in fragments. The pattern was a log cabin variation, small squares of cotton in faded browns, blues, and what had once been red, now pale as a winter sunset. Quilts in Ozark communities were not just blankets. They were records. Women stitched them from the scraps of worn-out clothing, a child's dress, a man's work shirt, a flour sack washed soft. To see a quilt is to see the wardrobe of a family compressed into geometry. Each square was a story. This quilt told at least 40 stories, and we will never know a single one of them by name. Number 19. A tin medicine box with contents, small, rectangular, hinged. Inside, 3 glass vials, 2 with stoppers still intact, 1 empty. One vial contained a dark resinous substance consistent with laudanum, an opium tincture that was standard in household medicine kits of the early 20th century, available without prescription, used for everything from toothaches to childbirth pain. The second contained a pale, crystalline powder the team's chemist identified as quinine sulfate, used to treat fever and malaria. The Ozarks in the early 1900s were not free from malaria. The disease had followed the Mississippi River Valley well into the hill country. This little tin box was someone's entire pharmacy. It sat inside a collapsed house for 100 years and still held medicine. If you've made it this far, drop a comment below telling me which one of these objects you think tells the most powerful story. I read every single comment. Let's keep going. We are just getting started. Number 18. A wooden school slate. Framed in wood, the slate surface intact, approximately 8 by 10 inches. On the surface, faint chalk impressions remained visible under raking light. Letters, practiced over and over. Capital letters. A child learning to write. The letter A, drawn in the careful, oversized way a child draws it when the hand is still learning to obey. Then B. Then a series of letters that didn't form words. Just the alphabet, practiced in sequence. The universal homework of childhood everywhere. There was a school somewhere within walking distance of this settlement, or a parent who taught at home. Either way, a child sat at a table with this slate and practiced their letters, and that child grew up and left and probably never came back, and the slate stayed. Number 17. A corn sheller, hand-cranked, cast iron, wall-mounted style, with the mounting board still partially attached. This tool could strip the kernels from a dried ear of corn in under 10 seconds. In a settlement with no electricity, no mechanical mill nearby, corn was life. Cornbread, cornmeal, hominy, feed for the animals. A hand-cranked sheller was a significant labor-saving device and would have been used hundreds of times a season. The teeth of the shelling drum were worn, but still sharp on the edges. It worked until the day whoever used it walked away. Number 16. A set of bone-handled eating utensils, fork, knife, and spoon. The handles carved from what appeared to be cattle bone, the metal portions in iron. They were wrapped together in a scrap of cloth when found, suggesting they had been stored carefully. These were not the everyday utensils. Those would have been simpler, rougher. These were the good utensils. Brought out for company, for Sunday dinner, for the rare occasions when ordinary life paused long enough to be treated as ceremony. Finding the good silver, even if it's iron and bone, Abandoned in a collapsed house is the kind of detail that makes a historian go quiet for a moment. Number 15. A kerosene lantern, still intact. Clear glass globe, unbroken. Brass fittings. The wick intact inside, dried to a fragile thread but present. No kerosene remained, but the faint smell of it was still in the mechanism after a century. Before rural electrification reached the Ozarks in the late 1930s and 1940s, a kerosene lantern was how you read after dark, how you found your way to the barn at 4 a.m., how you sat with a sick child through the night. Light was not automatic. Light was carried. The fact that this lantern's globe survived a century of collapse and freeze-thaw cycles without breaking feels almost like it was trying to be found. Number 14. A handmade spinning wheel, disassembled. Not a full wheel. Several components, carefully disassembled and stored together, wrapped in cloth strips. The spindle whorl was hand-turned wood, smooth with use. The wheel itself was too large to have been left whole, but the disassembly had been deliberate, not the result of decay. Someone had taken this spinning wheel apart with the intention of moving it. They had wrapped the pieces. They had prepared to go, and then they had not taken it. The spinning wheel stopped mid-departure. That detail has haunted everyone who has worked on this project. Number 13. A ledger book, partially legible. 48 pages, water-damaged but not destroyed. The team's document conservators were able to read approximately 60% of the entries. It was an account ledger. Debits and credits, goods and labor. Entries ran from approximately 1908 to 1923. Among the items, timber sold to a mill, 12 cords of firewood, 200 pounds of dried beans, labor rendered for a neighbor during harvest. The names in the ledger included surnames that still exist in Stone County today. This was not an isolated hermit family. These were people embedded in a community of trade and mutual support. They were known, they owed and were owed. And sometime after 1923, the entries simply stopped. Subscribe right now if you haven't already. We are getting into the most significant objects on this list, and you do not want to miss what comes next. Number 12. A glass canning jar, sealed with original contents. Ball jar, half-gallon, the zinc lid and rubber seal creating a vacuum that had held for over 90 years. Inside, dried beans, whole. The team did not open it. The seal was the point. The seal meant that the person who filled this jar had done their job perfectly, had processed the beans correctly, had screwed the lid down with confident hands, had set it on a shelf with the expectation that it would be there in winter when the garden was gone. It was there. 100 winters later, sealed and patient and completely unnecessary, because no one ever came back to open it. Number 11. A homemade fiddle, carved from a single piece of wood for the body, rough but acoustically intentional. The shape of the curves was not accidental. The strings were long gone, the tuning pegs cracked and split. But someone had made this instrument by hand, from local wood, with hand tools, with no training that we know of beyond what they had absorbed from the tradition around them. Ozark fiddle music was the social technology of these communities. Dances, church gatherings, Saturday nights on a porch while the lightning bugs came out. The person who made this fiddle was not a professional musician. They were someone who needed music badly enough to build it themselves. That is something. Number 10. A wooden baby cradle. Handmade, mortise and tenon joinery. The rockers worn smooth at the tips from years of rocking. The interior had been lined with what was once fabric padding, now dust. The joinery was tight and skilled. This was not a rough piece. Someone had built this cradle carefully, with love, with time. It had rocked at least one child, probably more. The worn rockers suggested years of use. This cradle outlasted the settlement, the family, and almost a century of abandonment. And it still rocked when the team carefully tested the mechanism on the day they found it. Number 9. A Bible, water-damaged but legible. King James Version, published 1887. The cover boards had swelled and warped, but had protected the interior pages better than expected. In the front matter, handwritten family records, births, marriages, deaths, spanning from 1889 to 1921. 8 children born. 3 died before their 5th birthday, 1891, 1903, 1911. The family name was written in a strong, clear hand at the top of the records page. Emma Creedy. For the first time, the settlement had a name. These were the McCreadys of Stone County, Missouri, and their Bible was their entire civil registry. Every life event that mattered recorded in ink in the front of their most important book. After 1921, no more entries. The Bible sat in the ruins and remembered them. Number 8. A collection of seed envelopes, hand-labeled. 17 envelopes made from folded newspaper, each sealed with beeswax and labeled in pencil. The labels named varieties: Mortgage Lifter tomato, Bloody Butcher corn, October beans, Blue Hubbard squash, Yellow crookneck squash, Tennessee Red Valencia peanuts. Some of these were heirloom varieties already rare by the 1920s. A few of the seed envelopes contained seeds that were still viable, confirmed by a botanist who germinated 3 of them decades later. The McCreadys were saving seeds not just for next year's garden. They were maintaining a living library of genetics that stretched back generations. 2 of those varieties are now in cultivation again, grown from seeds that sat in a Stone County ruin for 80 years. Let me know in the comments which of these objects would mean the most to you if you found it. I want to know what hits you hardest. We have 7 more to go, and they just get more extraordinary. Number 7. A box of hand-cut shingles, bundled. 53 shingles, hand-riven from oak, bundled with wire that had rusted into a single mass. Each shingle had been split along the grain, using a froe and mallet, you can see the marks, and then dressed with a draw knife to a consistent taper. This box represented approximately 3 to 4 hours of skilled labor. It was staged near the largest structure, suggesting it had been prepared for a repair project that never happened. Someone had split oak shingles in anticipation of a job. The job did not get done. The shingles sat in their bundle for a century, waiting to waterproof a roof that no longer existed. Number 6. A copper still, disassembled. This one needs no explanation to anyone familiar with Ozark history. A copper pot still, the coil partially green with oxidation but intact, the fittings hand-soldered with obvious competence. Moonshining in the Ozarks was not a criminal enterprise in the moral sense that outsiders often imagine. It was an economic necessity. Corn was worth pennies a bushel. Corn whiskey was worth dollars a gallon. A still was a value-added agricultural tool. The McCreadys had one. It was disassembled and stored with the same care as the spinning wheel, suggesting it was also intended to be taken when they left. It was also not taken. 2 major objects prepared for departure but abandoned. Whatever happened in this settlement, the departure was not orderly. Number 5. A leather-bound journal, partial. 40 pages, approximately half legible. Not an account ledger, a personal journal. The handwriting was different from the ledger, smaller and more hurried, and the voice was unmistakably personal. The entries the team could read described daily life. A difficult plowing season, the death of the older cow, a trip to the county seat, a prayer written out in full for a child with fever. One entry, dated with only a month and day, no year, read in its entirety. Walked the ridge at sunset. The whole valley was gold and the whippoorwill started before dark. I could not think of anywhere else I would rather be than here. That person is gone. That valley is still there. The whippoorwills still call before dark in the Ozarks in summer. Number 4. A set of blacksmithing tools. Hammer, hardie, pritchel. 2 pairs of tongs in different configurations. A swage block. Not the full contents of a smithy. This appears to be a portable kit, the kind a farmer blacksmith would use for field repairs rather than production work. The hammer face showed the distinctive crowned surface of a hammer that had been dressed and redressed many times. The tongs had been reshaped at some point. You can see where the reins had been modified by someone who understood what they were doing. Whoever held these tools was not a professional blacksmith, but they were not a beginner either. They had learned at someone's side, The way all practical knowledge moved in the Ozarks, from hand to hand, demonstrated and repeated until it became reflex. Number 3. A collection of handwritten music 6 sheets. Staff paper, expensive, unlikely to be homemade, with music written in pencil. 3 complete songs with lyrics. The first was a hymn, the melody recognizable as a variant of an old shape note tune. The second was a fiddle breakdown in A with chord markings in the margin. The third was something neither the historians nor the musicians they consulted could identify, an original piece, or a very localized traditional song that never made it into any collection. The lyrics described the Ozark landscape with specific geographic detail, a named creek, a specific hill, the direction a hollow ran. It was a song about this place, written by someone who lived here, that exists nowhere else in the world. It has since been performed at the Stone County Historical Society and recorded once. 6 sheets of pencil on staff paper, and a song came back from the dead. Number 2. A photograph, mounted on cardboard. Cabinet card format. Late 19th century, a studio photograph. A family. A man in a dark suit. A woman in a high-collared dress. 5 children arranged in front of them. The children range from what appears to be an infant to a teenager. The man's hands are enormous, visible even in formal clothes, working hands that no photographer's pose could disguise. The woman looks directly at the camera with an expression that is not quite a smile and not quite serious, something in between that feels like patience. On the back of the card, in pencil, Elias and Martha McCready. 1897, these were the founders. The people who built those structures, split those shingles, filled that Dutch oven, sewed that shoe. Elias and Martha McCready, photographed in a studio in 1897, staring directly at everyone who would ever look at this picture, which they could not have imagined would someday include you. And now, the most significant discovery from the abandoned McCready settlement, the object that brought together every thread of this story and told historians something they had not known before. This is number 1. Number 1. A handwritten letter, dated October 14th, 1924. 4 pages, pencil on lined paper, folded 3 times and sealed with wax. The letter was addressed on the outside to a name in Springfield, Missouri. It was never sent. It was found inside the ledger book, tucked between the last entries, as though placed there deliberately or in haste. When the team carefully unfolded and transcribed it, it answered the question that had haunted every object in this list. Why did the McCreadys leave, and why did they leave so much behind? The letter was written by a woman, based on the handwriting analysis, likely the same woman who wrote the personal journal. She wrote to her sister. She explained that the family had received notice that their land would be acquired by a timber company that had been buying up ridge property throughout the county. She wrote that they had been given 30 days. She wrote that Elias had refused at first, and then had been visited twice by men she described only as being from out of county. She wrote that after the second visit, Elias had agreed to go. She wrote that they were going to follow her husband's brother to a county in Arkansas, where land was still available for settlement. She wrote that she could not bear to take the spinning wheel on the wagon with everything else, that there was not room, that she had disassembled it thinking they would come back for it in spring. She wrote that she had sealed the seeds and left them on the shelf. She wrote that she had taken the Bible and the photograph and the children, and that was enough. And at the end of the letter, in the last paragraph, she wrote this: I hope whoever finds this place knows that we loved it. We worked it honestly, and we intended to stay here all our lives. It was not our choice to leave it. Remember us, even if you don't know our names. Her name was Martha McCready. We know her name. The sealed seeds from her shelf are growing again in Stone County. The song she or her family wrote about this valley has been performed and recorded. The photograph of her and Elias sits in the Stone County Historical Society's permanent collection. The Dutch oven with the initials EM was donated by Harlan Bates to the same society and is on display. She asked to be remembered, and she will be. These 25 objects from a forgotten Ozark settlement tell the story not of poverty or failure or tragedy, but of competence and love, and an ordinary life lived with extraordinary skill in a landscape that asked everything of the people who tried to live in it. The Macreadys shelled their corn and fermented their vegetables and played their fiddle and taught their children their letters and saved their seeds and built their cradle and fixed their child's shoe 3 times rather than throw it away, and then one October they loaded a wagon and went to Arkansas, and the hill took everything back. 25 objects, 1 family, 1 century of silence. Now you know their story. Go tell someone about it. The best thing you can do for the forgotten people of history is refuse to let them stay forgotten. Leave a comment below with the object that hit you hardest. Share this video with someone who loves American history. And subscribe, so you're here for the next one. There are so many more stories in these hills. We are just getting started.